Right, now, talking about odd situations, one of the other stories this year, in fact, just before the budget, was that there was something like $13 billion worth of pay equity claims, and the government was concerned about the exposure of the accounts to pay equity claims in New Zealand. I saw an absurd one from the Teachers Union last week. I'll come to that a little bit later on. Anyhow, there was a great deal of outrage from, I guess what you call old-fashioned feminists to a large extent. Our next guest, for example, or former MPs who, on both sides of the fence, it has to be said, National and Labour. And so this week they decided to have their own unofficial select committee hearing peoples on the effects that this would or wouldn't have on various occupations of this country, and whether or not the government's move was inappropriate or wrong. Joining us to talk about that, one of the originators of this concept, she's been very much in the fore of this particular issue, Sue Bradford, former Green MP, joins us now. Sue, love to have you on again. Thanks very much for joining us.
Kia ora. Good morning, everyone.
Sue, very quickly, what was the aim of this week? Because you're not going to change the government's mind, so what was the purpose?
It's not just about this week. What's happened is that Dame Marilyn Waring, who was a National Party MP, took the initiative just after the government brought through the legislation to cancel all pay equity claims, 33 of them, under urgency in May. Dame Marilyn invited 9 other former women MPs from National, Labour, New Zealand First and the Greens, and I'm the one that was in the Green Party. She invited us to form a People's Select Committee of 10 people, of 10 women, and invite submissions from people from any point of view, from any perspective, about what's happened with pay equity, what was happening before the government cancelled the current claims and changed the legislation, and what's happened for those groups of women workers now, and what are people thinking about what's going to happen ahead. And this process of People's Select Committee hearings is going to run over 3 months between now and October. And this week we held the first 2 hearings, the first in Wellington on Monday, and then on Wednesday we had another hearing online, and most of the rest of them will be online. We are all doing this voluntarily. It's not something we're paid for, but it's because we're the women MPs and former women MPs involved are so concerned, upset, distressed, angry, you name it, or from all different perspectives about how the government has treated these women workers, around 180,000 of them, and of course potentially more in future, by just wiping out something that in the past members of most political parties, including National, had supported.
Now, I'm hearing you, and I'm hearing what you have to say, but I mean, it's not likely you're going to be bringing a dispassionate view to that particular or People's Committee process, are you? I mean, you're not here to hear the evidence and listen to the balance of both sides.
Oh, we are here. We're very interested to hear as much input from any point of view. You can hear the passion in my voice, and all the women involved do care a lot about this issue. Otherwise, I don't think any of us would be doing it. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. But there is a big range of political backgrounds and views on the committee. We're not as one, that's for sure. And we are very interested in hearing the perspectives from employers. We would love to hear from the government, but I don't think we will. We're certainly inviting submissions and have had submissions from various people, senior and senior positions in public service and related legal professions and elsewhere. What's amazed me is both the number of submissions. I think it's somewhere around 1,600 that people are just taking this so seriously, even though we all know that we have this People's Civic Committee. We have no authority or power, nothing. We're just citizens. That's it. Citizens with an interest. But that people are taking it seriously enough to make these submissions as they would if we were the Parliamentary Select Committee that would have run if this legislation had gone through the normal processes of Parliament. That is, that the government would have put up a bill. Everyone, whichever point of view, would have been invited to the Select Committee to give their perspective. The Parliament would ask them questions and then change and formulate the legislation.
No, I understand that, but
yeah.
it does seem to be predicated a little on the basis, Sue, that the government's done away with pay equity. It hasn't, has it? What it's doing and what it's said is it's suspended these, and in fact it's cancelled these because it said we think it's too liberal, the criteria that's applied. We are going to process pay equity claims, but we're going to do it under different criteria. That will surely require a separate piece of legislation that will go to select committee. Surely everybody can have their say then.
I haven't heard that it will require legislation. Maybe it will, but they have set the terms of. They've absolutely. My understanding is that it's set already in the bill that they passed. That that the new terms are very precise about what will be required to meet the government's new requirements on pay equity. Every submitter, I think, that I've heard so far is saying that this won't work. There are so many barriers that have been put up, including one where employers can just pull out unilaterally at any on any claim. This very carefully developed process over many, many years, because it's not an easy process. Huge amounts of work has gone in over decades, and hundreds and huge investment of time and money, not only from unions.
I accept that, but I mean, if the premise
but also
was
from employers, it's all gone. But with the new regulation, the new law that Brooke Van Velden brought in just before the budget, that law in itself. I've yet to hear a submitter say that they think that that their claim would be able to go through under the new regulations, because in a number of ways they've made it virtually impossible for a claim for pay equity to work through.
Really, have they? Oh, okay, I'm looking right now at the bill that became the Act and was passed by urgency to change it, and I think you're right. Actually, it has gone through, and they won't need anything else. Here it does. It raises the threshold of predominantly performed by female employees from 60 to 70%. So you've got to have at least 70% in that workforce. And that's been the case for the last 10 years. So that's the first thing. So it's changed it from that. So 60 to 70%, and it's got to have been like that for the last 10 years, not like the teaching profession where men have almost been hounded out of it. It then goes on to say, ensure that there are reasonable grounds to believe the work is historically and currently undervalued, including a requirement for evidence. So you can't just assert it, you've got to provide evidence. And then much more clarity and guidance on the use of comparators. In other words, this is a similar job, not this one here. Their argument was it was too loose. I mean, it hasn't got rid of pay equity at all, has it?
It's got rid of under the condition. The new conditions have made it extremely difficult, and you haven't read out the full list, but one of the biggest barriers, apart from the way that employers can just pull out anyway unilaterally, is that the comparator is used to judge whether this work is of equal value to another group of workers. It's saying that the priority will be to workers inside that same occupational profession, which means where that profession is already heavily a woman's occupation, as in teaching, it's in others like care workers, home care workers, residential disability care workers, where almost it's very difficult to find a group of workers inside that occupational profession, or even for that employer, for whom they can make the case for pay equity. It's in the technical detail, and I know it gets hard to understand, but really what the government's done is virtually make it impossible to find that comparator group or groups, and it also entrenches occupations where women are
but
now
there'll have to be one, though,
underpaid
Sue.
And will continue to do so.
There will have to be one, though,
a lot
Sue.
of this is about historical occupations.
Yeah. But I mean, I find the whole issue of pay equity nonsense anyhow. So I mean, I don't have a personal lot of sympathy for the principle, because I think that the market now in 2025 pretty much sets the wages. You're suggesting, though, that pay equity as a concept, in actual fact, be advanced because what? You're saying that there is still some sort of historical disadvantage built in. Can I give the really good example of nurses to you? If nurses in New Zealand are underpaid because it's predominantly a female workforce, and yet they're on an average of over, I think the average nurse now earns about $120,000 a year, their comparison, presumably, when they do their pay equity claim, will be with other people within the medical profession, yeah? So surely the market drives that wages, supply and demand, just the simple normal stuff, rather than you're underpaid to be a nurse because, well, frankly, you're a female.
I think a much better occupation to look at the moment for pay equity claims would come from among the 33 claims that were just abolished retrospectively, which included groups like home care workers and aged care workers, early
Again,
childhood
supply
education
and
teachers,
demand.
midwives.
Again,
This is
yeah.
not this is not talking about registered nurses in Te Whatu Ora. This is talking about whole groups of workers that have historically been paid the bare minimum because their occupation has been undervalued as women's work, and all the characteristics, experience, skills that are brought to that work have been traditionally undervalued, often going back for centuries.